Hello, and welcome to a brief history of the Froshour family, brought to you by the Freshour Wiki. This video is intended to serve as a starting point for those interested in studying our family history. We know little for absolute sure about our ancestors who crossed the Atlantic, but the broad strokes are all there. The story of our family in the United States of America begins with our ancestors in Germany. Hans Georg Froshour and his wife, Katharina Graf. What we know about Hans Georg Froshour is this. He was the child of Hans Conrad and Sibylla Froshour. He was baptized on April 3rd, 1701, which means he could have been born in late March also. He had two siblings, Johann and Anna. In 1702 his father died, so he was probably the youngest child. His mother remarried in 1703, but then she died in 1724. We know less about Katharina. We know she was born in 1705 to Hans Adam and Katharina Graf, when we know that she lived in the Principality of Lichtenberg near Landau. Hans and Katharina were married by 1722, when their first son Wendel was born. The two settled in Wachenheim, Germany. Their first daughter, Anna, followed in 1729. In 1732, Katharina became pregnant with their third child, who she would be pregnant with all the way to the New World. The reasons they came to the Americas are lost to time, but it is safe to say that there was more land and a brighter future available in the British colonies. George had lost both his mother and his father, so he may not have had many family commitments, and he probably didn't even own any land of his own. However, whatever the reasons were, George and the pregnant Katharina, with 10-year-old Wendel and 3-year-old Anna in tow, left their home and headed for Rotterdam, Netherlands. It is not known if they went overland or by boat, but they probably followed the Rhine River either way. In Rotterdam, they boarded the ship Mary of London, captained by John Gray. They stopped once in Cowes, England, before crossing the Atlantic with almost 200 men, women, and children on board. 4 men died on the voyage. On Friday, September 26, 1732, the Mary arrived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the British colonies. On arrival, all adult males had to sign an oath of allegiance to the British Crown. While this was an oath of allegiance, it was still not a citizenship. The family followed a group of friends to New Jersey, probably the same people they came over on the ship with, but then came back to Pennsylvania, reportedly dissatisfied. Eventually, they settled in Maryland. The family grew. John was born in December, the same baby that Katharina brought across the Atlantic. George and Katharina had around 11 children total, 8 of whom we know lived to adulthood. When the British colonies declared independence in 1776, the Froshour family sided with the new nation. Wendel, now in his 50s, gave grain to the Continental Army. His son John served 2 terms in the Revolutionary War. After Washington's winter at Valley Forge, he was one of the replacements. And while he was sick in a hospital bed, he could hear the cannons of the Battle of Monmouth Courthouse. However, as all families do, eventually it became large, and some people moved away. Over the years, family members moved to Tennessee and Virginia, to Maryland and Pennsylvania, to Ohio and Indiana. By the 1860s, Freshours and Frushours fought on both sides of the Civil War. You may be wondering, why do we have the spelling of Freshour and Frushour when the original was Froshour? Was there a family argument? The truth is, it was nothing like that. You see, today we have spelling standards. How you learn how to spell hippopotamus in English is the same way wherever you go to school in the United States of America. However, in the 1700s and 1800s, literacy was less common, and if an educated person had to write down a word, what mattered was that it looked like it sounded, not that it was spelled correctly. This meant that the same word was often written differently by different people because all people wrote and pronounced things differently naturally. While this may seem odd, writing things down as they sound rather than by the dictionary spelling still happens every day today on the internet. The Froshours who went to Tennessee and Ohio generally spelled their name with an E, and the Froshours who stayed in Maryland or went to Indiana generally used a U. And that is the only difference between Freshours and Frushours. Today, we have descendants of the Froshour family in all 50 states, and we no longer stay in one place for our whole lives. The Frushour Wiki is intended to be a place where we can all come together and share in the legacy of Hans and Katharina Froshour, no matter how far we have wandered. If you would like to join us, just send an email to the site administrator with your full birth name and as many generations back that you know of, and we'll see about getting you plugged in. We're the Freshour Wiki, bringing our family history into the 21st century.